And once he hit Hollywood, well, then he didn't allow nobody to come near us. You know, well, you know how it is. It's that male thing that keeps going. Watch that male thing. But Whitey was a very smart man. I mean, a thug, a real hoodlum, but a hoodlum that became respectable. But that's what happens when you have young talent. But listen, Louis B. Mayer had the same thing with Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney. He got them for $75 a week. He had young talent. He wouldn't let it go nowhere because they were stars, and he only had to pay them $75 a week. Of course, we only were making 50. We wasn't even making 50 a week. But they control you. You know, we slept 4 in a room. We couldn't have it. I was 21 years old before I was allowed to have my own room. Oh my God. And they got mad because I asked for a room of my own. 21, I thought I'm a dancer. I mean, why can't I have a room? You want a room? You know, you had to break through everything, and I had to break away from it, and the war I broke away from it because of the war.
Well, one of the things you were telling me beforehand about, just to touch a little bit more on Whitey, was that he had sort of a progression as a manager, and one of the things that sort of changed him a little bit was the Broadway production Swinging a Dream.
Oh.
Can you talk a little bit about Swinging a Dream and then how he sort of acted in Hollywood?
Swinging a Dream was the biggest Broadway show in 1939. Biggest. Agnes DeMille was the choreographer. Walt Disney did the scenery. Benny Goodman. Every major star. Dorothy Dandridge. Butterfly McQueen was Puck. Dorothy McGuire's first Broadway show. Don Voorhees' 26-piece band in the pit. In Midsummer Night's Dream is a play within a play. And the players, Louis Armstrong is playing Bottoms. That's the man that went ahead of the jackass, you know. And Benny Goodman's small group was on this side. Muggsy Spaniel's small group was on this side. Don Voorhees' 26-piece band was in the pit. And we worked with Benny Goodman opening up the second act. That was the first time when we were tied together. And it was a show-stopping number because we had Charlie Christian on guitar, Lionel Hampton. It was an all-black group with Benny Goodman. That was a group that played in Swinging a Dream. And from this, you remember to Dawn That Dream, you dream each night. That song comes from Swinging a Dream. And that was our song from it. The only thing came out of that play was that song, and it became a hit because Louis Armstrong sang it. Yeah.
You mentioned Louis came up to you after the show, because the show ended up being a huge show.
I was crying. Yo, listen, it was the biggest flop. They said it would take the United States Mint to save the Swinging the Dream. And I saw that, and I was crying. And then Louis Armstrong came, I heard a voice say, never cry about a show closing, baby, because there's always going to be another one. And that was 1939, and that was how I met the great Louis Armstrong. And we were friends right up until his last performance in New York. I played with him. My jazz men opened with him at the Town Casino, Ben Mastic's Town Casino, I don't know, someplace in Brooklyn. And me and the jazz men was Louis Armstrong's opening act, and that was the last performance, actual live performance he did in New York City. Yeah, fun.
Wow. Well, can you tell us a little bit about the Savoy Ballroom? What was the ballroom like? What was the experience there? What was the dancing like? And what was your most memorable moment?
Well, see, the Savoy was a mecca. And remember, we didn't go to any other ballroom. See, we were confined. But what was amazing about the confinement, everybody came to the ballroom. So we mixed with some of the best there was, whoever it was. We had an Italian boy who was one-legged, and he had a crutch named Jimmy Valentine. He could outswing anybody you wanted. He could swing, you couldn't believe it, with one leg. There was Harry Rosenberg, another Jewish boy. Their families didn't want them to come and mix with us, really, but we were a generation that was determined to get together, and that's what we did. And it was all of what we did is the result of what you're seeing here today. What we did was right, because you liked what we liked. We love dancing, and it's an American spirit, and that's what I think the Lindy Hop gave to the world. Now, Benny Goodman is coming with the youngest, grooviest little guy, Gene Krupa. That's his saving grace. And I mean, Gene Krupa is hot. He's about 18 or 19 years old, taking on the old master. Oh my God, that night. Now, we didn't have computers. We didn't have no internet. How they know? We had as many people outside the ballroom as inside. And the price to get in was $1. And I think some of them had to put the money together to get there. But 4,000 people crowded in the ballroom, 4,000 people crowded outside. It was without a doubt the greatest night in music, in swing history. And Benny Goodman, I mean, he didn't feel, I can imagine they were very uncomfortable. A whole white band coming in opposite a whole black band. But that didn't stop them. They swung like crazy. And you had to give it to them. Of course, the issue is, who was the better band? My argument, of course, Chick Webb outswung Benny Goodman. John Hammond seemed to think it was different because he said Chick Webb didn't keep a steady tempo, because every time Chick Webb got on stand, you see, as a band was finishing, the other band would be coming in, joining the same song they were playing. So for 1 minute there, you had two bands playing as one band started off and this next band is playing. And when Chick came in, naturally he'd go the tempo up. And I said, well, you know why he picked that tempo up? Because he wanted to kick Gene Krupa's butt. But it was a friendly rivalry, because I talked to Benny Goodman before he died, and we spoke about that night. It was memorable, because you got to realize our black musicians was demeaned. I mean, they couldn't go nowhere. If they went on the road, they couldn't go in hotels. This was a chance for them to take on the greatest giant, and the greatest giant respected what these guys did. And that's the one thing I loved about musicians. They respected each other. And Gene Krupa respected Chick Webb. He had to bow down to the master, because Chick Webb wiped his backside. He wasn't gonna let nobody come in there and take that crown away from him. No, that's all, remember, that's all he had. I mean, white bands could go into hotels and things. Our bands couldn't do that. So when they took charge. But what came out of it was this great combination of love of music that expounded around the world, and it couldn't be stopped. Our love created a whole passage around the world, and that was stronger than anything that they tried to destroy. They could not destroy our music. They did everything in the world to do it, but they couldn't. The kids loved it, we loved it, and the results of it, some of the greatest music, out of that became the great Count Basie, because I mean, John Hammond went out all the way out to Kansas City and brought Basie in. I mean, and here come Basie with a sound of music that, wow, Basie had the greatest rhythm section in the world. He had Bigham, Walter Page, Joe Jones on drums, Teddy Green, thumper, 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 thumper on guitar, and Basie tinkling, tinkling, tinkling. You couldn't believe what music came out of this great group, and we were all part of it. It was my life. I lived every day with these guys.
You mentioned just now about the respect amongst the musicians. What was the respect like among the dancers? And Whitey's was the second generation of Lindy Hoppers at the Savoy Ballroom.
Well, that came about because Whitey pitted Frankie against Shorty, because Whitey was slick. So when the first Harvest Moon came up, it was a foregone conclusion one of them would be the champion, no question about it. But Frankie made the mistake of wearing a brown suit. And Leon wore a white suit. And Leon had a girl that had big